You guys remember when the backrooms were still cool and mysterious and not some shitty Reddit LARP? The simulation got too close to everyone discovering a flaw in the collective memory that so many people shared a feeling of when they first saw this picture, so it had to whip up a clever bullshit way to make people stop caring about it, and that's by using retarded zoomers on Reddit and their stupid Chris Chan tier imaginations to make the backrooms into a fucking joke. Then Viola, no one takes the backrooms even the least bit seriously anymore. We were on the cusp of something, so many real genuine questions about collective consciousness, simulation theory, alternate realities, and more were about to be asked and then further explored, and then just as fast as the questions were being asked, the backrooms community becomes flooded with idiots and their stupid LARP wikis full of dumb shit like almond water and party poopers and other retarded shit like that. Now no one considers that maybe, just maybe, there is something to be genuinely learned and studied by the real-world collective memory phenomenon seemingly caused by the backrooms. I was kind of obsessed with the backrooms, but I'm just kinda disappointed with where things went with them. Do you care to elaborate any further on why they're real? Any and all theories should be shared, because the backrooms should belong in the realm of theory, not fiction, even if the backrooms is theorized to be no more than a shared psychological phenomenon like the uncanny valley, but even that has its own creepy implications. So my idea does not carry any authority unless another individual within their gut feels the same way. That is how we can get to the bottom of this phenomenon, the same way it became popular, shared emotional experience from completely unrelated individuals. I believe they are real as much as people who have never seen a ghost believe they are real, or people who believe in aliens believe as such. The intuition in my gut doesn't necessarily tell me that they are real exactly the way they are described by people on the internet, but that there must be some truth to what I witness within myself when I look at that picture and read that text. They are real in theory, but so is so much in the scientific world that is simply accepted as fact. Why would someone go to the trouble of simulating a buffer of 600 million square miles of randomly generated joined room maze? To be honest, it sounds like the home of the Minotaur. And the concept of backrooms or the labyrinth is a lot older than we are being let on. Holy S H I T. That actually makes sense. The appearance of the backrooms must differ depending on who's observing it, or what time period they are from. There's a Doctor Who episode from like 10 years ago that featured a minotaur in a simulated maze of hotel rooms that fed off of people's faith or despair. Or something. Could these seemingly unrelated ideas all stem from a common source? Bro. I just thought of something else. The myth also says that the only guy who managed to escape the labyrinth did so by taking some string with him, sort of like a lifeline, not only to find his way back, but perhaps to provide an item to keep his entry no clip so that it wouldn't seal him in on the other side. Maybe the Minoan simply stumbled across a glitchy area in our reality and over the millennia the legend changed. It was built by Daedalus though, and he's supposed to be human. Maybe he had some sort of admin key or level builder for the simulation. I think you have found a big clue there, Anon. Also, I am willing to bet sometimes lost objects end up there. I would assume that if it's real, there are actual ways in and out without glitching there. Like keys or something. I know there have been movies about how people can make doors access different spaces. Anyway, the Minoan labyrinth has a pretty specific shape to it and isn't even really a maze. Perhaps the idea of a clipping buffer in a simulation, but that perhaps has been discovered or used, is an okay way to think about it? I don't know. Bruh. It's just a dingy interior design style that was popular in corporate environments in the 90s and 00s. We all have vague memories of experiencing spaces like that because we did when we were kids. The reason why we feel uneasy about it is because it's clearly a space that was designed for offices, yet it's completely devoid of desks or cubicles or people or anything. So that makes it uncanny. The comparison to mythology is apt but misguided. This doesn't mean that the labyrinth is literally real. It means it's a psychic archetype that exists in the human mind which is manifested through mythology and culture. It's a symbol for being lost. I think we shifted timelines again. Can CERN retroactively change our timelines even if it's ahead of their schedule to begin working again? I bet there are new Mandela effects as well. Sort of. If you know how a sinc function relates to the Fourier transform, it is symmetrical in time or frequency domains. So there could be some pre-effects. Backrooms jumped the shark the moment they add monster into it. Suddenly it became just another flea from monster stories. I felt that supernatural things are now must be beaten down into lowbrow entertainment for kids. Because only kids who think a horror is a horror if there's a scary monster in it. Backrooms has so much potential, but they're all wasted. Well yeah, but I think the original vibe that the original Anon was trying to convey was the real vagueness. Is there a monster? Or is it simply an urban legend? Who can say? Perhaps it doesn't really exist, or maybe it does. Just a single abomination wandering the 6 million square miles of halls. Even if you did end up in the backrooms, considering the size, the likelihood of you actually running into the monster unless it knows exactly where you are and can travel at supersonic speeds, then you are not going to run into it. There is literally entire continents of backrooms between you. Which I think is better. Actually running into the monster is a low risk, but not impossible. Just a single unseen horror wandering the endless backrooms. I think it adds something nice to it. Would make falling asleep harder and give a low-lying feeling of tension to a person trapped there just knowing the monster could be near. Piranesi is a kind of good book with similar themes. Maybe after enough time, you become the single unseen horror that is always wandering. Herder guys, I glitched into a paranormal dimension via video game glitch. It's really quite ridiculous. You idiots are getting it all wrong. That or maybe you're purposely trying to throw off the thread for whatever reason. No clipping is simply the name given because that's what it resembles, but if we are to take into account simulation theory and maybe a bit of quantum, then it's actually a plausible theory to question that a quantum accident could happen, enabling a way for an individual, object, or maybe even just someone's astral form, to pass through an opening or no clip out of reality into an adjacent one. Because according to some actual theoretical physics, quantum theoretically dictates that until an object is observed, it doesn't have a set state of matter. Now think about it, what if there was something minute cosmic accident where that object, such as a wall, wasn't observed properly, like walking into it backwards or something, or maybe just a single millisecond of chance and you were able to pass through it accidentally? There are actually stories about things like this apparently happening to people in real life, urban legends at least, but the stories are out there. Damn. I remember the old backrooms discussions. I was there since day one of the backroom post. It was comfy and eventually some Anons posted things about how there's these random places which still had power, uses fluorescent lights and had this backrooms kind of feels, abandoned buildings which seem to go nowhere. It's like one of those parkour videos but you end up finding some weird place with questionable existence, abandoned buildings which you probably wouldn't dare enter. It's probably some meth lab or something, or could be worse, but you just won't go deeper in the labyrinth as you may never return if you do is what you thought and felt. I have lost interest ever since some shizos tried to split the fandom, being all pretentious with their new wiki. What a shame, it was a really cool setting. I swear something is trying to prevent genuine discussion. Like agents in the Matrix, these normies are just serving to prevent real questions from being asked about reality and real answers being found. We simply need to ignore them, and make fun of them until they leave. Is it possible to end up in another reality when going through the backrooms? Can the backrooms be used to discover the secrets of the multiverse? The more fleshed out it becomes, the less horrifying it is. The golden rule of horror is to never reveal the monster. This requires a lot of subtle writing and world building while still allowing the reader freedom to view the monster in their own terms. Reddit is not capable of this. You can blame systems such as karma and post-history for enforcing a devoid culture. If anybody isn't already aware of House of Leaves, I would highly recommend to purchase or borrow this novel. Do not do any research and make you get a color version. It uses the labyrinth mythology to great success. A YouTuber Solar Sands made a video on liminal spaces, of which the backrooms are an example. https://www.youtube.com/watch v=u_drqmdgdp8. The partygoers, almond water, whatever they may be, and monsters just take away from eeriness of the original backrooms. As to why they're so remarkable, I think they trigger the same part of the subconscious as Uncanny Valley characters do. They look like what a room should be, but without any inhabitants, tools, or any object which indicate a purpose for their existence. The fact they connect to more unremarkable, blasé rooms makes them even creepier. Stop questioning why everyone feels a familiarity to photos of the backrooms. There is nothing interesting to see here. Move along now, the backrooms do not exist. Let me try to explain in a non-inflammatory way. The purpose of this thread, in my interpretation, wasn't to practice creative writing and building lore with no purpose other than to be interesting, the same way one would write a storybook or an anime. The idea of it was to discuss the paranormal/X/esque implications of the backrooms existing in people's collective conscious. Is it just a result of us all being familiar with rooms resembling the backrooms? Is it because our soul/consciousness is somehow linked to the concept of a labyrinth that we interpret with our modern schema of a room, and ancient Greeks would have interpreted with their schema of a stone labyrinth? Etc. Why does this vague idea evoke such unique shared feelings to everyone who hears about it? Just adding lore and world building for the sake of it, with no thought behind it besides what makes a good video game level, doesn't accomplish this. The most vivid lucid dream I ever had was quite similar. I was falling through a hallway with oddly shaped and spaced doors on the walls, and eventually fell into a room at the bottom. I realized I was dreaming, and ended up in a white classroom, with some weird entity speaking gibberish to me. Can't even remember what it looked like, but things speaking gibberish to me are pretty common in my dreams, lucid or not. What did the entity look like? I don't remember. It was kinda just like a silhouette of a humanoid, and when it was speaking in an actual language, but when I woke up it was like it got all scrambled and I couldn't understand it anymore. That's actually interesting. So you would say you understood the language but only in your dream state? Yeah, basically. It actually happens quite a lot in my dreams, and it's not always weird entities, it's sometimes people too. Some time ago, someone did shrooms and heard his inner voice preparing Elvish speech language before it got turned into English of his dialect. Whatever the entity said was probably spoken in primal or divine tongue, aka Elvish. IME, entities impart concepts, and are scant on words. Things like EVP are very difficult for entities to do. If you hear real ones, notice how the entities invest so much effort to make crappy little gibbers that don't sound right. They try so hard, and that's all that comes out on crap equipment. Because good high-quality equipment is to be used by people with larynxes. It's material stuff to be used by people with meat suits, but crappy low-quality electronics can pick up entities as stuff, without filtering it out. Yet I have had the white room happen and black checkered room like I did once. Ended up in what essentially looked like an incomplete 3D CG animation setting or something, like without the textures, and this absolutely massive floor that was nothing but huge black and white squares blinking back and forth between each other's colors interchangeably, that felt like it was a massively colossal distance away. In the air where I was on a ledge of sorts, there were other platforms floating in the sky, some looked like a bright Torx blue or green, like a green screen, and they had doors, and the outline of other various objects I don't remember. But the whole place was just driving me insane with this existential dread for some reason. Then I woke up. And for context, when I saw a picture of the inside of a Masonic temple, the floor really reminded me of that dream which I had kind of forgotten about until then. Let me spin some bullshit and see if anyone has an epiphany. Typically, we are trained to think of space as a thing that objects exist in. That is, the implication space is its own, separate, entity and objects happen to be there and can warp it with their sheer mass. What is actually happening is the other way around. An object existing creates the space around it. Thus any place matter exists, space will exist around it for it to exist in. Space with no object simply doesn't work. Of course, in practice the distance at which astronomical objects continue to project their influence can be quite massive. Frankly unimaginable to people. Thus we technically share space even with incredibly far-off entities. If anything other than locality makes objects share the same existence, I wouldn't know. Yet physics is observes it keeps coming up to me on in thought and the internet and now this post. Ever since I had that dream. I didn't think anything of it and it's probably nothing more than my mind screaming at me trying to make me realize what the dream was of. Okay, so this circular corridor was miles long. And time was weird. Like time is weird in dreams, but I remember frequently realizing just how weird it is and how I walked for hours but it felt mere seconds. And I mentioned it to people I met on the path. Most of the doors weren't that interesting, one led to a cafeteria, one to a shower/changing room, but I can remember two opened up to recurring dreams of mine. I frequently have recurring dreams, in fact practically the only type of dreams I have now are not original. Or if they are then I quickly forget about them. The second dream that I walked into was me walking down cavernous/tight halls. Hard to describe. And it quickly leads to a small dark room with no light source. Around the entire room are square bird cages and in the center is also a bunch of bird cages stacked into an almost foundational pillar. On the floor there is straw/feathers and bird shit. Usually I have this dream within a different backroom-ish dream, but I remember little from that one and it's much less extensive than the circular corridor. The first recurring dream is also boring and CBA to talk about. The only difference to the backrooms to my dream is that I never felt threatened and I wasn't alone. I kept meeting and losing track of multiple people, usually people that I knew a long time ago, but the people I didn't know I felt friendly to just the same. All throughout the dream I sensed this deep melancholy feeling as I realized that I would keep meeting people then losing then, and it felt like I kept trying to find everyone so we could all be together, but it felt like it would take an eternity. Most of this is honestly BS rambling, but if even a fraction seems of interest to anyone then I'll be glad. The Netflix show Creeped Out has an episode called The Many Place which featured a family of two sisters and one brother lost in an endless maze of hotel hallways. Each time they found an elevator to return to their world, it brings them to another reality. The Many Place basically acts as a multiversal hub realm of sorts, linking many realities together. Also, there is a monster roaming the hallways called the Quinkin. Many Place entrance is in Australia, so of course, and he eats your eyes if you look at him. So yeah, the Minotaur maze aspect is even in this show too. Anyone ever read the book Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman? It talks about people, places and things falling between the cracks of society. This between world exists as a maze that interconnects and winds throughout our own. The people who live in the betwixt can come back into our world, but the people of our world barely acknowledge them. We can converse with them for a bit, but then we'll forget we had a conversation, or they will almost instantly fade from our memory, on most occasions. I think this is close to the whole backroom stuff. It isn't so much a singular looking maze but interconnecting places that shouldn't connect. The backrooms that so many people see, or the Minotaur's labyrinth or anything else, is just a location or piece of the whole betwixt. Maybe the real backrooms was the friends we made along the way.